How did you come to a conclusion that it doesn't have an IP? If I create a container, okay, to run command, it's okay, but why it doesn't have a IP? How did you came to a conclusion that it doesn't have an IP address? Okay. Just tell me, how did you come to a conclusion that it doesn't have an IP address? To run a Spring Bat Clinic, you need an IP address. But did I show you a Spring Bat Clinic screen on using some other command? Yes or no? Then there should be some network IP address, right? Yeah? Okay. So there is an IP address. You don't know how to see that, because we have not covered that in the classroom. That's where I'm trying to think. Just focus on present, not on future. The only thing which you have to understand so far is whatever has happened in Docker and whatever is going to happen today. Right? Yes. Thank you. Okay then. So I think in the last class we have discussed that Docker is an isolated container and it literally has everything, okay, what an application requires. What an application requires. Right? So now let us get into the container world. Okay. Let me go ahead and create Docker container. So what are the different states that container will be in? Container will be in running state, exited. Exited is stopped. Okay. These are the only two container states. Your container will be either running or stopped. Okay. The third one is not a state because it will not be in that, because it is removing the container, deleting the container. Right? Container will be running or stopped. Okay. So for my container which is running, can I stop the container? Yes. For the container which is stopped, can I start the container? Yes. Okay. You can do all of that. But the whole point is your container will have only two states, which is running and stopped, or started or stopped. Okay. Yes. Okay. So if I have to depict that, okay, Docker container run, or you have one more command which is called as Docker container create. Okay. So this command, what it does is it will try to create the container. When it creates the container, the state will generally be initially, I'll use started and stop. Okay. Started. Okay. But if your CMD is not right, it might end up to stop. Okay. So for example, you have written a CMD which is echo hello world. It will print echo hello world and it will come to the state which is stop. Okay. So once you have finished using your container, then you can remove the container. Okay. That is, okay, for the started command or a stopped command, started state or a stopped state, you are trying to okay, you will execute a command called as RM or remove. RM or remove. And here terminated or. So here you will create a container. Okay, container might end up in started state, or if your CMD is not correct, it might be ending in stopped state. From stopped state, I can go to the started state, and from either started or stopped, I can make the container terminated. These are the stuffs. And in this, if I have to speak about states, only started and stop are states, because creating is not a state where it writes in, it is an action. Terminated is also an action. Okay. Your container can be in only started or stop. Okay. Quite recently, what Docker has done is they have given one more state. They have done one more state, given one more state. That state is called as paused. So you can pause the container. Pause means it is not stopped. Alright. So all the processes which are running inside your container will be paused. Right? When you say unpause, they will start as usual. Right? So they have given a pause. So from started, you can go to the pause state. Am I clear on this? We didn't have this pause earlier, but right now we have pause. So our container can literally be in 3 states right now. Okay? That's where I said 3 and then I have corrected it back to 2. And now we have totally 3 states. Started, stopped and paused. Right? So, and the third stage is paused. Okay? From going, if you want to, whatever container which you have paused, if you want to run that back, then you have command called as unpause. You have a command called as unpause. So for your container, we have only 3 states: started, stopped, and paused. And we can do 2 actions for a container. We can create a container or we can delete a container. Okay. So from start, I can move to stop. From stop, I can move to start. From start, I can move to pause. From pause, I can move to start. Okay. Right? Clear on this? Okay. Started or running is same for me. Stopped or exited is same for me. Right? And then paused. These are the basic states of your Docker container. Am I clear on this? Yes. Okay. We already have. Yes, go ahead. Stopped means no process will run down the line in the future. They are all terminated, killed. Kill process. Exited and stopped on OT. Okay? Exited and stopped is your notepad is running. What you have done is you have killed the notepad process. Okay? You can again start the same notepad process. Terminated means you have deleted notepad from your system. There is no notepad from now on. Paused means you have stopped that process from executing. It is still in the task manager, but it is not executing. That is a pause state. Okay. So, this process la image number pair marchipenne. What is it? Docker 6. Okay. ./images/docker6.png. Am I clear on this? Okay. Docker container. Okay. Creation modes. The first one is called as attached mode. The second one is obviously detached mode or so, and the third one, okay, even though it belongs to one of the state, but it is interactive. You have started a container, but you are not running the application. You are getting inside the container. So whenever your Docker container you are creating, you have three modes to worry about. One is attached mode. Second one is detached mode. The third one is, okay. Shall we play with this? Okay. I will execute the commands. Then we will find out what is the difference between attached, detached, and interactive. Okay. So let me go to the Docker playground. So I'm still using Docker Playground because for individual machines, Docker Playground is more than enough. So whenever you are working with one machine, you really don't need a Linux machine for that. This is already a Linux machine and you are playing with that. Okay. So earlier we didn't have this playground. So we were installing, we were taking a Linux machine and in that we were installing a Docker and then we were playing around. Okay. So now I create an instance. Okay, so let me create the container. Docker container run or create, whatever it is. Run, and I am calling it as. Okay. So what is it I have done? Docker container run. So first the Jenkins image is not found locally. So it will go to the registry and then it will try to go to the Docker hub. Then it is trying to run the Jenkins. And while it is trying to run the Jenkins, it is showing us what is happening inside there. Okay. So in this case, what is happening? You are attached to the container's output, or you are attached to the container standard output terminal. You are attached to the container's standard output terminal. Are you seeing Jenkins startup logs? Yes or no? Jenkins start అవుతుంది, ఆ logs అన్ని కనబడుతున్నాయా? Yes? Yeah? Now, I'll just do Control C. Okay? And now, I'll try to run the same command, but this time I'll run it little bit different. Docker container run -d Jenkins. Now what has happened? Are you seeing the output? No. Okay. So that is the difference between attached mode and a detached mode. -d stands for detached mode. Run the container in the background. I don't want to see what is happening inside the container. If you don't give -d, it will run always in the attached mode where you will be seeing what is happening. So remember we run this Docker container run hello. I have asked you to run this command earlier also. So this is in which mode? Attached mode. Whenever you are seeing a output other than pull complete and all of that stuff, that means that it is in attached mode. Now I can run the same stuff. If I add -d, it will only give me an unique ID. That ID, remember for every image which we created, we had an image ID. In the same way, for every container that is created, we will have a container ID and a container name. For every container which you create, we will have a container ID and a container name. If you give the name, it's okay. If you don't give the name, Docker will name it. All these days, we have not been giving any name to the containers. So, Docker container PS-A. Are you getting container IDs? Not only that, but if you look at the end of the screen, are you seeing some names? Hardcore, recursion, keen _3, top sharp _2. All of these are the names which are given to your containers by Docker. Right? నామకరణం మీరు చేస్తే మీరు పెట్టిన పేరు ఉంటుంది, లేదంటే డాకర్కి నచ్చిన పేర్లు అది పెట్టుకుంటారు. But there is not even a single container in Docker which will not have a name. Every container will have a name and an ID. The only difference is whether you name it or whether Docker daemon will decide the name. Clear on this? Right. So, we have looked at the attached mode and detached mode. Are we clear on this? So, in attached mode, what happens? Your terminal's output will be connected to the output of the container. and whatever is happening in container, you will see it. It is good while you are developing the container, but whenever you are running your production servers, you will never run a container in an attached mode. It will always be in a detached mode, because on one server I might be running many containers. If my terminal is attached to one container, I will not be able to work on other containers. I have to create a new session altogether. Okay. Now the third option, Docker container run -it. Okay. Jenkins /bin/bash. Now in this case, what has happened? You have created the container and then you have logged in inside the container. Now this terminal, what you are saying is containers terminal. Clear on this? So totally we have 3 modes. Okay. Whereas in production you will use only detached mode. You will use attached mode or interactive mode for experimenting with Docker containers. Am I clear on this? So I'll simply write these 3 statements over here. Attached mode is, okay, our terminal will receive outputs from containers std out, standard output, and sometimes standard error also. But you will not be able to type anything. That is a read only view. Whatever is happening there, you will be able to see that. Detached mode. Okay. Container runs in the background and you will receive container ID. Interactive terminal is, okay, create a container and log in into interactive shell of the terminal, whatever shell that is supported. Okay. So when I say bin/bash, it is a bash terminal. Right? If you want to connect using some other interactive terminal also, you can do that depending on what is the terminal which you want to connect. Okay. So for this, I am giving you some commands. Docker container run Jenkins. While writing a command, press Ctrl C to exit the container and also the container outputs to your terminal. But this is a problematic area because you want to come out, and when you want to do that, in that process what happens is your container also gets stopped. మనం బయటికి రావడానికి కంట్రోల్ C కొడతాం, అది కంటైనర్ ని కూడా ఆపేస్తుంది. Yeah, that's the other problematic area of it. But generally you will never run your production servers on attached mode. Okay, right. So over here it is very simple. So all these days I was using -d, but I have never said what a -d was. But today are we clear why I use -d? Docker container run -d. Here -d stands for detached. Okay. So interactive terminal, Docker container run Jenkins. Okay, I'll come back to that. Okay, you can give -it, and over here, okay, you can give the path of your terminal or you can leave it also. So let me show you some example. Let me exit out of it. Docker container run -it Jenkins. Now what is happening? The default terminal that is configured for Jenkins is bin. It is not bin bash. It is the standard output. That's where you are seeing the output of it. Okay. So Now let me try to run one more container. Docker container run -it. So if you see over here, it is not a bash terminal, it is a sh terminal. Okay. So from container to container, what your default terminal is can be changed. It is not that every container will go with bash. Every container will go with bash. Okay. So now if you want to be clear with your terminal, that's where we are passing bin/bash. Okay. So whenever you are passing bin/bash, what is that you are trying to tell? Log in inside the container using that terminal. Okay. Here there is only one error case. Your bin/bash might not be present. In some of the, because Docker containers will have only what is necessary to run the application. So for your application, if bash terminal is not required, your container might not have it. Okay. So let us try that. Are you getting an error? Because Alpine image doesn't have a bash terminal. But if you run the same thing using, works. Because it doesn't have a bash terminal, but it has a sh terminal. Containers default terminal can be anything. Can be anything. If you don't pass it, it will go to the default terminal. If you pass it, it will go to whatever terminal which you are interested. But whenever you are passing your terminal, it is not guaranteed that every container will have the terminal which you are asking for. Am I clear on the statement? Okay. But majorly, all of the major images will have bash. There are few exceptions. Okay. Right. So shall I exit out of this? Yeah. So Docker container -run Jenkins bin/bash. And I'll also write an Alpine example so that you are clear and you remember this topic. Docker container run -it Alpine, and in here there is no bin/bash. You have to go with bin/sh. Even if you don't give that, it will by default go to bin/sh because that is the default terminal of that. Okay. In that Alpine image, the creator of that image has thought that why do I need to have bin/bash? It is unnecessary waste of my storage. So I am coming down. Okay. Now let me try to tell you. Okay. What is Alpine? Okay. So it is an interesting stuff. Okay. We all know Linux, right? So generally, what do you think is the size of the Linux? How much size will you require to run Linux? At least 100 MB? Yeah, okay. Docker image ls. You have Alpine, right? What is the size of it? In 5.59 MB, they are running a Linux operating system. So when they want to run a Linux on such low spaces, they will not have anything which is not required. Bin/bash takes more space. That's where they have gone to bin/sh. Okay. Alpine is also a Linux operating system, right? But whenever in some cases you want to run this on machines where you have low disk spaces, right? So, but you want to do many things. So for that case, Alpine is one Linux distribution which can work on very thin areas. That's what an Alpine is. Clear on that? Alpine is one distribution of Linux, much like your Ubuntu or CentOS, but it is designed to be very minimal in nature. Okay. So before this, I have not seen any Linux kernel. Okay, there are Linux kernels which are of this much smaller size, but still capable. I have seen smaller than this also, but they were not capable. They were designed to do only one thing. So, for example, every Wi-Fi router of yours has a Linux kernel inside that, but it is very, very limited in nature. Now, in this Alpine, it will give me this, and I can do anything. I can install Java if I want. That will increase the size of your terminal. But whenever you want your Docker images to be slim in nature, okay, you will start with Alpine. That's the reason why I'm specifically speaking about Alpine. Okay. So if your customer comes with a requirement saying that, okay, create a Docker container, but it has to be in less size. I want your size to be optimized. So the first decision which we'll make is, okay, let us use Alpine, because Alpine comes with a very thin flavor of Linux. Okay. If I take Ubuntu, let me do this. Docker Osh. Docker pull Ubuntu. And similarly, Docker pull CentOS. And now if I look at Docker image ls, just compare the sizes. Ubuntu goes to 64 MB and your CentOS comes to, okay, 5 is more slim than 62, right? Yeah, that's the whole point. Clear on this? So do we note these 3 modes now? Yes? Okay, right. Now, let us try to worry about Docker container commands. Docker container create or run command. So let me try to do this. Docker container create Alpine. So what is create directly doing? What is that? It runs your container by default in a background mode, in a detached mode. That is the difference between run and create. So Docker container create will by default go with a detached. Docker container run can be customized. Okay. So for the people who have been using Docker from many time, they prefer run command because that's where they know the customization. It is just about the usage. Whether it is a run command or whether it is a create command, they are all same. They're all same. Because in production, you will end up running them in detached mode itself. So whether you use a run -d or create, they are exactly the same. Right? Clear on this? Yes? Okay. So do we know about container creations now? Yes, but I will be using run itself in the classroom and there is no problem with using run. Okay. So clear on this? Yeah. Okay. Right. Now we know how to create containers. What is the next best thing? Delete. So Docker container, first thing is ls. Okay. So listing containers. Okay. Docker container ls. Sorry. Or you might see in some cases using ps. PS is the older command. Okay. CLI has upgraded now. Okay. It will show all the containers in running state. It will show all the containers in running state itself. Okay. Alright. In the same way, if you want to see all the states, just give -a and here also give -a. Will show the containers in running and state. So if I do Docker container, okay, ls-a, I get all of them. Am I clear on that? So I get all the containers, right? So this is listing. Okay, now removing containers. Okay, containers can be removed from stopped state. Okay, if they are in running state, you have to clear on this. If the container is stopped, it's okay. It will be removed. But if the container is running, then you have to force the delete. Okay. By default, it will not allow to delete it. Right? Okay. So, and the next thing, to remove containers, we need name or right. Okay. Right. So Docker container RM container name. Okay. Name or ID. Okay. If you want to delete multiple containers, right? You can do this. Name or ID. Container 1. Okay, not this. Name or ID container 2. Go on. Okay. So now if you see, if I want to run all of these containers, what does it have to do? Docker container RM and then copy this command, and after that next container ID, and then okay. So but this sounds like a nonsense approach. How many will you do that? Okay. So remember Docker container ls command, ls hyphen a will give me a list of all the containers, and then if you just add a queue to it, it will give you all the container IDs. Okay. If the output of this command, if I send it to the remove command, it will delete all the containers. ఈ కంటైనర్ అవుట్పుట్ ని తీసుకెళ్లి ఈ కమాండ్ అవుట్పుట్ ని తీసుకెళ్లి నేను రిమూవ్ కమాండ్ కి పాస్ చేస్తే సరిపోతుందా? యూజింగ్ డాకర్ కంటైనర్ ఓకే ls hyphen a, I'll get all the containers, and in that I am interested only in IDs. That's where I am passing hyphen q. So if I pass hyphen q, I'll get all the stuff. Now if I want to remove all the containers, it is simple. It is Linux trick. This has nothing to do with Docker. So Docker container RM, okay, and then you have to pass the output of other command. Whenever you want to do this, Linux tells that you have to use a dollar symbol, parenthesis, and then say Docker container ls hyphen a hyphen q. This will remove all the containers. But remove when I am removing all the containers, there can be some of the containers which are in running state. So to remove that, we have to force the delete. So for that, remove hyphen. Now you do Docker container ls hyphen a. It will be empty because we have removed everything. Clear on this? Yes? Sounds easy? Yeah. So to remove all the containers, Docker container RM hyphen F dollar Docker. That's it. Done. Simple, right? So now we know a little bit about hyphen D command now. Whenever I use hyphen IT, what does it mean? Whenever I am not passing anything and if I am using a run command, I am going into attached modes. Okay. So, but in reality, we will always run our containers in a detached mode. Until unless you are experimenting with containers. Right? I have not given a full release to the containers. I am facing some issues. Right? So how do I basically do it? Okay. So remember yesterday we were trying to build the Docker image. Yeah. So you can come across Docker image by taking the parent's image, logging in into that container and executing your commands. So shall I show you that approach? I'll not be documenting it. Remember you have created a Spring Pet Clinic. So for that I have taken a base image as what? OpenJDK. So Docker container run hyphen IT open JDK colon 8 / bin / okay. So into that, what was it? Image creation. I just need this. Okay, as am I inside the container now? So I will try to execute this wget command. Okay. So whatever gets into the run command, you can manually test it. Okay. So is it downloading? I do ls. Okay. Am I saying Spring Boot Clinic -2 dot, right? Now I want to run this. So Java -jar. Is my application starting? Right? So whenever you were trying to do that Docker image, this was what is happening internal. So it is as good as you taking the base container, logging in inside the container, and then executing all of your steps manually. Right? So before running the container, before creating a Docker image, this is also one decent approach. If you want to check whether your run commands will work correctly or not, there is no need for you to do it in any other way. Take a base image, log in into that machine manually by using -it command and execute your run commands on your own. If they are working for you when you try manually, when you are building the image also they will work. Right? If they are not working over here while building the image also, it will fail. That is the other way of basically looking at this Docker image creation, especially the commands which are required for you to run the application. So right now I have run the application and I am quite sure that the application is basically running. Am I clear on this? Yes. So now I have a way of basically logging in inside the container. Now remember in the beginning of this class they said that the container doesn't have an IP address. Container, whether it has an IP address or doesn't have an IP address, is something which belongs to the container. Now get inside the container and then try to see IP, AD, DR. Do you have a network? Okay. Do you have some IP address over here? Yes or no? So I have an IP address. Okay. So why it is not accessible to the external world, second story. But do I have an IP address? Yes. Look at the settings over there. I have memory. Okay. I have total tasks which are basically present. I have everything. Okay. I have literally everything. Clear on this? Yes. So whenever you are building an image and if your image instructions fail, okay, take a base image, log in into the machine manually. Whatever you are trying to do while building the image, do them manually. Do them manually. If they are working when you try manually, they will work in the Docker file also. If they are not working when they are basically executing over here, then they will not work in the Docker file also. But in Docker file, there is only one exclusion. So in your command might work when you are typing, because sometimes when you enter the command, it will ask for a question saying that do you want me to continue, yes or no. If you are manually doing it, you will pass yes. But Docker, while building the image, whenever it sees that kind of terminal, it will stop building the image and say that it is an error. So whenever you are writing your commands, ensure that you write your commands in such a way that, okay, it will not ask for prompts from the user, because while building the image, there is no user who is entering the prompts. There is no user who is entering the prompts. If you remember, I have written apt-get install Apache 2 -y. If I don't pass -y, my image building will fail. Okay. So let me show you that one also. Docker container run Ubuntu -it /bin /bash. Okay. Now I'll say apt-get update. I'm getting some Ubuntu packages. Okay. Now I will say apt-get install Apache 2. But if you see, is it asking a prompt now? Okay. The moment it asks for prompt, Docker, while building the image, will stop building the image and say that there is an error. Because Your run command is asking me to enter something, and I don't want to enter anything, and I will not enter anything. Right? So the better way to solve this is I do the same thing and I pass -y. Now we have passed -y to this command. See what happens. Is it asking any questions? So always remember, whenever you are writing Docker file instructions, you have to write instructions which will not ask any questions or approvals from the user. It should be a script which basically executes everything on its own. Clear on this? Right? Okay, good. Now, where are we? Okay. So we know how to create containers, we know how to look at containers, and we know how to remove containers. But we have to remember all of these commands. That's a big question, right? Don't even try remembering the questions. So just go to the Google and then say Docker cheat sheet. Okay. I'll give this to every tool which you remember. Okay. For example, tomorrow if you are practicing Ansible, I'll not expect you to remember Ansible commands. Go, look at the cheat sheet, try to open the cheat sheet, whatever cheat sheet that you like. Okay. I'm not even suggesting one particular cheat sheet. Okay. So in this cheat sheet, they have the whole history of it. Okay. And especially if you are looking for commands, Docker CLI cheat sheet. Man. CLI cheat sheet. So are you seeing Docker build command, Docker run command, okay, Docker create command, Docker execc command, okay, Docker start, Docker ps, Docker logs, Docker images, Docker RMI. Do you have commands? And is it showing the command example over here? Yes. Why do you want to remember that? Use it too many times so that you will remember them automatically. Okay. Nizanga command మీరు గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాలనుకుంటే try to use that command too many times so that you will obviously remember it. Clear on this? Yeah. So you take any cheat sheet. There is no need for you to remember the commands. That is the first approach. Second approach. Docker container, okay, run --, help. But you will get lot of help, so I am using less command. So runs the command in a new container. Then are you saying it? So are you saying CPUs now? While creating the container, if I want to tell that run this container in 4 CPUs, can I pass that CPUs there? Yes. So what is the CPU in which you should allow it? How many memories do you allow it? Come down. You will have whole lot of list. Okay. Let me go to M. So are you saying something about memory? Yes or no? Okay. What is the memory limit? Okay. You are giving some -m. Okay. But who puts these limits? Remember yesterday we have discussed about something called as C groups. Yeah. So whenever you are entering the commands over here, the C groups come into play. Yes, they will try to tell that, okay, he is asking me to run a container with 1 GB of RAM and 2 CPUs. So let me restrict it to that. If you don't give any stuff, Docker will decide your stuff. It will be flexible in nature. Earlier, there was some limit. When Docker started, whenever you run the container, if you don't pass the memory, it used to create with 128 or 256 MB of RAM. Okay, it was all fixed. Now they have removed that fix. They have made it flexible. Clear on that? So now, are you saying this stuff now? Help, -, help. Right? For the people who are used to command line, -, help is a decent option. But for the people who are not used to command line, -, help is not that great option. Right? So now the other workaround is, we know that I have to use Docker container run command. Are you seeing the Docker's documentation? Okay. So are you seeing whole stuff over here? He will try to tell you the whole stuff. Whatever you have seen over there, he is giving in the page. Okay. And from here you will see all the different containers. So what I would recommend is Docker command line Okay. CLI, okay, or let me call it as Docker CLI. We have three approaches. One is cheat sheet. The second one is, what is the second one? Use help. Okay, so use hyphen help. So for example, Docker container run hyphen help. The third option is use Docker documentation. Right? Over here you will have all the commands. All the Docker commands. Okay, just click on that command, whatever you are trying to run, and you will get the help of it. Okay, so whatever that is the approach which you like, anything will work out. Anything will work out. Am I clear on this? So there is no need for you to remember any command. Start using them. Okay? మన లినక్స్ కమాండ్లు ఇంజనీరింగ్ నుండి గుర్తెట్టుకుంటున్నాం. ఎన్ని గుర్తున్నాయి? రైట్? స్పెక్ట్రమ్ లో ఏమి ఇస్తే అయ్యే గుర్తున్నాయి. అది కూడా పరీక్ష రాసే వరకు. That's the whole point. I don't want you to do it in that mode. Right? If you use this command, it is very easy for you to remember. Clear on this? Yes? Okay. Now, we have created an image. From the image, the container is created. Okay. We understand CPU. We understand RAM. But how is the storage working? How does that storage work? So what is the relation between Docker image and a Docker container when it comes to the storage aspect? Okay. So let me ask you a simple question now. Okay. Now let me go with Docker image ls. So let us assume that I am speaking about this Alpine image. Approximately take the size as 5 MB. So from this Docker image, it stores 5 MB on my system when I download this. From this I am creating two containers. So will each container will have that 5 MB of space? Yes or no? It should have it because all the data is inside that. Okay. And other container is also created. So from the same image, you are trying to create two different containers. 5 MB for the image, 5 MB for the container, and 5 MB for the other container. Totally 5 into 3, 15 MB. This is what we will think, right? This is how VMs work. But in Docker, it doesn't work that way. It works in an optimized fashion. So that's where, okay, I'll not be able to finish that. Okay. But our next class's discussion would be what are Docker image layers? Okay. And how does this storage mapping work? And what is the union file system? So we'll get into the Docker storage aspects of it. Okay. We'll understand volumes and then we'll get into network. When we get into the network, we'll get back to the expose command. So that's how we'll be doing this. Clear on this? Right? Okay. So fine. Am I clear with whatever we have discussed today? So please practice it and don't use exactly the same images which I am using. Go to Docker Hub and use whatever you want. Okay. So don't restrict just to some documentation they use BusyBox a lot. You also try what a BusyBox is. In Docker Hub there is an image called as BusyBox. Many people use that in their blogs. You can use that. There is no one stopping you from using the other Docker images. Then class lo ive vaadani kabatti meeru ive vaadali. No. You can use anything you want. But you start with these images. I take some specific examples because they will help you in some of the activities. For example, whenever your company says that I want a slim image, Alpine. So the reason why I have written Alpine there is we should get used to Alpine command line. We know apt get update. So there is something called as APK update. Okay. So we do apt get install Apache 2. There we have something called as APK add something. APK add and package. So You have to know this way. That's the reason why I have mentioned that. Clear on this? Okay, right. Now let us look at questions. Okay. How to log in into existing containers. Okay, that is actually a discussion of tomorrow, but in Docker we have not started speaking about some command which is called as Docker exec. Okay, so once I finish about image layers, I'll be speaking about that command. But if you are interested, if you want to do something now, there is something called as Docker exec. Career related question: SRE versus AWS solution architect, which is best or higher? Okay. It depends on what you are right now. Okay. Right now, AWS solution architect and SRE, which is higher? It depends on what your organization is doing. Right. But if you speak about package in US, SRE has a better package. Yeah. But SRE expects you to be an expert in DevOps. Right. Okay. Malik, please type questions. We can't unmute you. Okay. So if you want to speak with me, please post this class. Call to quality thought. I'll answer your question. Okay. How to expose containers both? నేను ఎగ్జాక్ట్ ఇదే మాట్లాడుతున్నాను. నేను అసలు జనరల్ గా ఐఎమ్ స్పీకింగ్ అబౌట్ సంథింగ్. వై ఆర్ యూ థింకింగ్ అబౌట్ సంథింగ్ ఎల్స్? ఓకే. సో డూ యూ హ్యావ్ స్టిల్ అట్లీస్ట్ ఆంజనేయులు గారికి ఉండకూడదు. ఎందుకంటే యూ హ్యావ్ బీన్ ట్రావెలింగ్ విత్ మీ ఫర్ సమ్ టైమ్. I don't think so I skip topics, right? Yes, I'll tell them when the right time comes. So on the day one, if I have said -d is detached, you would have understood anything on that? Yeah. So sometimes I postpone my answers because that might not be a right time for you to understand. Please understand that. Okay. So నేను డాకర్ క్లాస్ అయిపోయినప్పుడు ఏమన్నా మర్చిపోయి ఉంటే అప్పుడు చెప్తాను. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ టెరాఫార్మ్ ఎట్ ద లాస్ట్ సమ్ ఆఫ్ ద స్టూడెంట్స్ హ్యావ్ ఆస్క్డ్ మీ అబౌట్ సంథింగ్. ఐ సెడ్ ఐ విల్ టెల్ యూ అబౌట్ ఇట్. Okay. If there is any topic skipped, it is definitely not intentional. Okay. It might be something which I forgot. Okay. If that is the case, I'll try to tell about it. Please focus on the areas. I have not spoken about network. Docker networking is a whole area. From there, our openings, or we'll get into something called as Docker Swarm and Docker Kubernetes. Okay. So we'll speak about it. But till that point, if you really want to remember, if you have gone through the videos of previous classes, I was using some command called as -p. Okay. లేదు నేను ఇప్పుడే చేసేయాలి, నాకు అది అత్యవసరంగా కావాలి అనుకుంటే, ఆల్ దీస్ డేస్ డాకర్ కంటైనర్ రన్ -p 8080:8080. I was using some commands which look like this. Google what they are. Then you will be able to understand. Yes. Okay. What is Docker product means? Okay, Docker has their own product. Docker is a product, and Docker has different product lines. Right now, what we are using is a free version of Docker, which is Community Edition. Docker also sells. So generally, how these open source companies work is, whenever you are giving everything for free, how will you get revenue? Right? So what they do is they add some more features to the open source product. Okay, and they give support. And that is exactly what is called as Docker Enterprise. So in Docker, we have mainly two lines. One is community line, the other one is enterprise. Right. Okay. Is it mandatory to use a Docker file, or can we log in into the container? Yeah. If you log in into the container and create it, it will be good for that machine. What will you do if you want to run the same container on some other machine? Will you also create one more container and log in into that machine and do the work? No. If it is Docker file, it is simply one command, right? Docker container run -d my container. Your container will start working. Right? That is a better approach. ఒకవేళ నేను ప్రతి మెషిన్ లోకి లాగిన్ అయ్యి ఎప్పటికప్పుడు చేసుకుంటున్నాను అనుకోండి, అది పనికి ఆహార పథకం అవుతుంది. రైట్? वो मनरेगा हो जाएगा, क्योंकि आप अक्षय बात कर रहे हैं, इसीलिए बोल रहा हूँ. So it is not a good idea. So if you are quite sure that the container which you are trying to run is only one time job, there is no other work, then follow the manual approach. But if you want to share your work with others, then container cannot help, image can help. That's where you have to write a Docker file. Yes. Can we add CPU or memory to the container if needed? Can we? Yes. Can we add CPU and container memory to the RAM if needed? Yes. Yes. Okay. In prod, it is risky. In prod, don't remove it. Remove individually. This command is for practice only. RM -RF is a useful command. But if you go to the root, user and go to the root directory and run that command, your whole and operating system will be wiped. Okay. So I am not saying it is a safe command. It is a useful command when you are practicing. Sometimes you might be working on a system with 1 GB RAM and your space might be filled up. You want to clean up everything. Then that is a command. Yes. Okay. What is zombie in task? I'm not answering that at this moment. What is CMD for what remove few container? Pass the IDs. Right? Can you explain -IT? -IT is interactive terminal. You want to log in inside that container and do some interactive work. That's where it is called as interactive terminal. How are you making expanding of a Docker container? Okay, that is Alt Enter. If you go to that page in Docker Playground and execute a key called as Alt Enter, that page will be opened. Is Alpine an RHEL distro? No. If it was RHEL distro, it would have been 5.5 MB. Right? Okay. What is difference between stopped and paused? Stopped means your process is basically terminated. Okay. So whenever you basically want to restart it, it would be recreated again. Okay. But your state will be remembered. When it comes to paused, you have just stopped your process. Okay. And then you will restart it. You will not restart. You will continue again whenever you want. Alright. Continuously I am getting an audio problem. Please check your internet connection. Because out of these many people, if you are only alone facing the problem, it could be your internet connection also. Yeah. Can the output to the file will be in a detached mode? What is output to a file? I am running a Docker container over here. So when I am running a Docker container, what do you mean by output to a file? You are running an application. So can you explain output to a file now while running an application? No, there is nothing like that. Yeah. Okay. Create and run, both are same. No, there are slight differences, but the basic necessity why we use create and run is to create a new container. That's the commonality of it, but there will have different command lines. Yeah, okay. Instead of started, the name is up. Yeah, it's okay, man. Up, started. There are many synonyms, right? Yes. Is there refreshing kind of thing for container when we change code? Containers you are not supposed to refresh. You are supposed to recreate whenever a new code comes. Clear on this? So, refresh will we'll go to downtime approach. Okay, when a new release comes, try to run your application in a new container. Once that container is up, switch off your old container and give a connection to the new container. That is less time taking, right? Rather than you basically going and executing the stuff in that means you are making it a VM again. So whenever you want to upgrade your application, you have to write a mail to your customer saying that today from 10 AM to 12 AM, we are doing a very important security update. So please don't use our systems. Right? If you come to containers and if you are sending those kind of messages, it doesn't make sense because container is a very small element. If it is a small element, run the new element. Switch off the older one. That's how it is. Right? I think I've answered all of them. How to use Linux using Docker? How to Linux using Docker? How to use Linux in Docker? The Docker is using Linux actually. Right? You are not using Linux because whenever you say Docker, in the Docker playground, Docker is using Linux and you get a Linux kernel obviously. Right? So Miriam use already vadatun. Right? Okay. How can we exit from the login container to the machine? How will you exit? Type the exit command or Control C. Yes. It is same Linux commands. Yes. Okay. Oh, fine. Any questions in the classroom? వస్తాను వెనక నుండి ముందుకు వద్దాం. అసలు వెనకుండా అడుగుతూ మానేశారా? మీరు ఎక్కడే ఉన్నారా? నిన్న ఎవరు అలవైకుంఠపురంలో సినిమా చూస్తున్నారంట క్లాస్ లో. రైట్? దాంట్లో 2 తప్పులు ఉన్నాయి. ఒకటి పైరసీ. రైట్? రెండోది మీరు చూశారు పక్కనోడికి ఎందుకు కనపడాలి? రైట్? పక్కనోడికి కనపడకుండా ఏమైనా ఎన్క్రిప్టెడ్ కళ్ళద్దాలు గట్టా పెట్టుకొని చూడండి. రైట్? ఓకే. ఎస్. ఎనీ క్వశ్చన్స్? ఎస్, గో హెడ్. No. User has to log in into the application, not a container. Because as a user, I am not worried what you are running. You have been using Google Drive for all these days. Have you ever tried to understand what was running beside Google Drive, behind Google Drive? No. That is as a user of your application. Yes. Yes. అయిపోతాయి ఆ మెషిన్లే తీసి పక్కన పడేస్తారు. నాకు ఎక్కడ సేవ్ అయి ఉన్నాయి, మళ్ళీ మొత్తం మొదటి నుండి మొదలెట్టాను, ఏమీ సేవ్ అవ్వాల, డాకర్ పుల్ చేసుకున్నాను నేను. సో ఇఫ్ ఐ హావ్ సేవ్డ్ ఇట్, డాకర్ ఇమేజెస్ అంటే స్ప్రింగ్ బెట్ క్లినిక్ కనపడాలిగా, ఉందా స్ప్రింగ్ బెట్ క్లినిక్? సో మరి నాకేం శక్తులు లేవండి. రైట్, ఓకే. Okay. Because when we run in attached mode, that was the first time when we were running the command. First time when you run the command, your image might not be present. It has to download the image. That was an extra time. Yeah. And generally for writing the output to the window, it takes some extra time, but that will not be absorbed by you. Yeah. Okay. Right. How container is? Docker container run command is what we have seen. So there is a Docker container pause command. There is a Docker container unpause command. There is a Docker container start command, and there is a Docker container stop command. That is how we basically use it. For all of the start, stop, pause, unpause, we'll be using either container ID or container name. We have not gone through that CLIs yet. Yeah. Okay. Yes. It will write to the standard output, and you can fetch those logs.
I have given some amount of memory and CPU. I want to extend it. Do I have to create?
Just look at Docker start commands -help and then see what is that you are seeing there. Okay. I am not answering that. Docker start container start -help lo command line lo em options unnayo chudandi. Okay. Right. How to get Docker details? Not logging in into Docker. How to monitor multiple Dockers in running state? There are tools, obviously. If you monitor without logging in into that, you have to use some external tools. And there are many tools which can help you in getting that. Okay. So for example, you might use Nagios with a container extension. You might use Elasticstack, right? You might use Prometheus, but you have to go with external set of tools. Or Docker gives you one UI also. That is not a very decent UI, but it will also tell when you log in into that web page what is running and what is not running. Alright? But for that you have to do something extra before you basically come to that state. Yeah. How do you know which base image to be used? Okay. That depends on what application which I am trying to run. For example, if you remember, I was trying to run a Java application, so I will try to take a base image which has Java. Okay. And whenever I type Java on Docker Hub, I'll find a lot of images. But out of that, I'll pick the official images, which are from standard organizations. That's the reason why we have used OpenJDK. That's the reason why we have used OpenJDK. I'll go with OpenJDK or Oracle JDK, something like that, which is official, images. That's it. So first is what your application needs, alright? Which image is basically satisfying most of your application needs, and try to make that image from official. If you don't find an official image, at least try to take the image which has many number of downloads and which has many number of questions in Docker. Right? You will see the activity, right? ప్రతి డాకర్ ఇమేజ్ కి ఒక యాక్టివిటీ ఉంటుంది, రైట్? 2016లో క్రియేట్ చేశారు, ఆ తర్వాత ఎవరో వాడలేదన్నారు అనుకోండి, అలాంటి ఇమేజ్ మనం తీసుకుంటే ఆ తర్వాత మనం వాడుకోవాల్సి వస్తుంది, మళ్ళీ మనం రాసుకోవాల్సి వస్తుంది మొత్తం, రైట్? సో that's the reason. So try to take an image which has some activity, lot of downloads, recent updates. Try to take that kind of image if you don't find official. If you are finding official images, nothing like that. Alright? All these days we have taken official images. We have taken Apache 2, or we have taken Ubuntu official image. We have taken the Alpine official image. We have taken the OpenJDK's official image. Stick to official images as much as possible. Right? If you are running an application, usually we will have configuration like web.config. If that configuration fails, to start, how we can get those configuration? Is there any way? See, if your configuration is failed, your application will misbehave, right? Yes. Now the only thing which you have to decide is whether that configuration, whatever you are trying to change, is a major or a minor one. If it is a minor one, you can log in inside the container and make that changes and ensure that it will never happen, right? But if it is a coding error, don't try to fix the container. Try to ask him to create a new image and with that new image version, try to create a new container. Major or minor? Okay, that's what you have to understand. Because the problem is in Docker today, you are looking at only one container. Going down the line, what we might be doing is, from one Docker image, you might be creating 100 containers. Now you tell me whether you log in into all the 100 containers and do it that manually. That doesn't sound like an approach, right? Easiest approach is fix it in the image itself. Docker lo fix levi login chesi cheyamu. Endukante idi problem. Tomorrow, whenever you are going to the production instance, your each Docker image might be run by 100 different containers. Now, if you have to fix something, is it okay for you to log in into 100 images or create a new image? That's the whole idea. That's where we'll be creating a new image always, right? Okay. Can we restore deleted containers? There is no restore option. Recreate the container using the same image, because deleting the container is not equivalent to deleting the image. You still have an image. Go and create one. Okay. There is no restoration options, right? Okay. Fine then. I'll stop it at that. We'll meet again tomorrow to continue this discussion of image layering and further Docker commands. I'll not be telling only Docker commands because it might sound boring. So tomorrow let us mix with some concept, right? Today we have tried to understand the concept of modes: attached, detached, and interactive. Tomorrow we'll be going with image layers and container layer. Okay, that is what we'll try to understand. Then we'll get into Docker exec, Docker start, Docker stop, all the commands, all the next set of commands. Alright, okay. Thanks. మీరు బయటకు వచ్చేయండి.